All right, YouTube, Trump has opted not to attend the White House Correspondents Dinner. Of course, this is textbook fascism, according to, like, the CNNs of the world anyway. They're acting more outraged at this than they are basically anything else that he's done. Oh, he's a coward. He doesn't want to get roasted by, the same people that have been doing that for a year straight. I don't blame him. He doesn't want to waste time. He wants to go off to the Mar-a-Lago, which is now functioning essentially like Camp David, I guess, and do other stuff related to the cyber or something else that Trump envisions as an important policy. Trump is actually quite a funny president, though. The idea that he lacks wit, or that he's slow, or that he can't take a joke, I think it's fairly evident that's not actually the case. We get a long-standing history of Trump as almost a funny man, let's face it. He always has sort of the same Trumpite persona, but at the same time, he's capable of being insulted and laughing it off. He's done that through show business for decades now. He's been in like sort of comedy situations before. And one look at his Twitter, it's basically a long-running joke anyway. Look at what he said about Perez there getting selected by the DNC. Oh, I couldn't be happier for you or for the Republican Party. Very tongue-in-cheek and astonishingly accurate as well. The Republicans do, by the way, today have a reason to celebrate, let's just face it. But why would Trump want to sit there around people, almost all of which donated to his opponent, almost all of which stumped around for his opponent, almost all of which for the last month have done nothing but call him every name in the book? Why would he want to go and sit in with them and pretend it was some sort of a celebration? And the idea of the White House Correspondents Dinner is a fairly modern thing anyway. It's not some long-standing American tradition. Oh, yeah, what George Washington met with all of the local printing firms back in the 1700s. This is a post-Reagan sort of thing. This is like the 70s, 80s, and beyond that this sort of stuff is happening. In fact, prior to the advent, I think it's a pogrom against TV for Trump, or the TV media in generation, let's face it. Because prior to the advent of things like television, in which politics is almost like a reality show, which fits in well with Trump's persona, I suppose, in some ways. Prior to that, it was considered below the office of the president. It was considered unbecoming of the leader of the free world, so-called, to engage in this sort of infotainment-style diatribe. It was considered below them. Can you imagine somebody like, let's say Teddy Roosevelt back in the day, participating in some early radio program where they play that evil swing music and get the various political and media heads to go at one another and crack lame jokes? I mean, nobody's going to watch the Correspondents' Dinner anyway. Even if it was still a thing, it looks like they're not even going to really have it. They're not going to have the gala associated with it either. A bunch of people had already pulled out of it in protest of Trump. He's simply pulling out in protest of being protested, I guess. It doesn't make him a coward. It means he doesn't want to waste his time on something let's face it, it's sort of a dying tradition. Trump is a social media president, not a TV president. It's sort of like the TV era presidents. You think of JFK or something, and radio or something. Why are they going to sit down and talk to a steadily declining audience in order to justify antiquated platforms of communication? It wouldn't make any sense. It just doesn't. He'd be better off going on to Sirius or something and talking to someone there. He'd be better off slapping his ass down into a chair in someone's dorm room for a podcast. He'd be better off going and having a conversation with Mulnu or something like that than attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner. What the left is showing here yet again, in collusion with the corporate media, is that they can't let go of the 1990s. They can't let go of that last era in which it was TV that was super relevant, in which it was the popularity politics of the television that were extremely relevant, in which a president didn't directly communicate with the population. Trump has started what I think is going to become a new American tradition. It's like Obama social media on steroids. Obama would sit there and sporadically he'd tweet something out. he'd make a Facebook post, something like that. Towards the end of his presidency, of course. Before that, it was there was no Twitter in 2008. Facebook wasn't in the modern form it's in. YouTube was still rudimentary compared to what it is now, especially with regards to live streaming, let's face it. Politicians now are being dragged, politicians in many cases who are quite a bit older than the average web user, people in their 70s, their 80s, are now being dragged into the social media era. Even John McCain is addicted. He was what was it that time that he people thought it was funny he was playing like Angry Birds or something during a session there of Congress or whatever he was doing at the time. Maybe he was looking up porn, who knows? Probably Vietnamese porn, let's face it. But Trump is a social media president. He's got a bigger presence there. He can speak in an unfiltered manner. He doesn't need the press to analyze what he's saying. They will, but he can speak directly to people. He's been doing this for some time. He can also take advantage of the fact that you can say things on social media that you wouldn't necessarily say on TV without getting fined by the FCC or whatever, or on radio. And he can be as raw and unfiltered as he wants, speak directly to the people that comprise his fan base. He's not worried, really, about what CNN thinks of him, I think. These people who proclaim him to be thin-skinned, they say, well, ultimately, he wants to be loved. He's got, mental problems. He wants to be hugged and loved, and he just doesn't know how to go about it because he's a bully or something like that. They're not understanding why he communicates with people the way that he does. It's simply more effective. It's pure strategy. It is. It's more effective. People with no political presence at all, who started out on YouTube or Facebook or something half a decade ago, now in some cases have more fans and more subscriptions or whatever on whatever platform they're using, more viewers than large segments of the entire TV era media. The TV era media, by the way, when it tries to make its transition to social media, simply ends up posting the same crap that they put up on TV. Often they turn off the ratings and they turn off the comments, don't even let people interact with that content. What's the fun in that? Where's the fun in it? Trump makes a tweet. People can comment on that tweet. They're essentially talking directly to the president, occasionally even retweets other people. He makes a video post online. People can interact with that content. I've never seen anything... politicians, in my opinion, if they're thin-skinned and cowardly, they'll have a YouTube channel or a Facebook page or something that you can't interact with. You can't comment. You can't vote it up or down. You can't weigh in. You can't give your opinion directly there. You'd have to do it somewhere else in order to respond to it. That's the hallmark of a coward in the social media era. Somebody who's really censorship happy, doesn't allow other people to really communicate. It's like the Democrats site there with their Hillary Clinton, oh, resist, keep fighting message. You can't comment on it. Well, I wonder why. Could it be worried that they're afraid that they're going to get a hell of a lot of negative comments there? Take a look at the ratings. I think you'll see why. Trump doesn't do that. Trump doesn't give a fuck. If you communicate with the content and you're critical of him, he doesn't care. A lot of people will also be positive towards it. And I'm sure that he sees some of that and he likes it. But why would he waste his time with dying elements of the media when he can hang out with a bunch of bloggers and vloggers, ultimately? He'd probably rather do that. Maybe he'll make his own Correspondents Dinner in the future, where he invites web personalities to go and stream the event, to ask him questions, to tweet out about it, and so forth. That would probably be a step in the right direction for the presidency if our political system is interested in communicating directly with the public. Social media has made that really easy. And a lot of these people, they don't like to do that. They don't want to be challenged. They would prefer to have the captive corporate media they've been taking bribes from them for decades. They've been giving them favorable treatment for decades. They've got a long-standing mutualistic relationship with the CNNs and the Fox Newses of the world for a very long time. They would much rather communicate with them and not have to communicate with somebody who potentially is going to ask them a muckraking, off-the-cuff question. Trump doesn't do that. He posts on social media where anybody can interact with it. Whether it's positive or negative interaction appears not to faze him. He's been in situations where he's been roasted. He attended that one, can't remember. Was it what was that idiot from Jersey Shore that time? who participated in a comedy roast of Donald Trump, and it was very funny, specifically because it was very poorly delivered, and that sort of stole the show. And Trump appeared to be having a great time, but I mean, he's sitting there, he's getting insulted by people who have made their their brand on insulting other people in a comedic fashion. And he did just fine. Then he delivers his own roast of these other people, and it was funny. It's the way he operates. He's not thin-skinned at all. I think he's honestly incredibly thick-skinned. Whether you realize it or not depends, I suppose, on how you interpret what he says on social media. Him lashing out at somebody who's insulted him, who's high profile, is his way of saying, I can play this game too. But at the White House Correspondents Dinner, what's he going to get? He's going to get reamed by people who then write up a bunch of negative reports about him no matter what he does. He could be as personable and caring and shake as many hands and say as many glowing things about the media as he wants. It would be bad for him politically, because either his fans see him as a sellout if he does softball them, or the corporate media crucifies him if he doesn't. It would be bad for him politically. It would also, it wouldn't gain him anything, because they're probably going to make those negative write-ups of what he says anyway, even if he is, again, personable, and doesn't particularly go after them while they happen to be there. It's just a dying edifice. It's like the idea of like radio addresses FDR style. Can you imagine if later presidents had stubbornly clung to continuing to do that and hadn't made the transition to TV? And then you go into the TV era, political figures that can't make that transition don't do well. You get to the early internet era, people who can't deal with the fact that the internet is now a thing don't do well. Something like maybe Santorum or something. He gets his ass reamed literally and figuratively by the internet when he makes his attempt to run. Or Mitt Romney, maybe. He wasn't exactly the most internet-friendly candidate either. Now we're in the social media era where everything is instant and interconnected, easy to interact with. If a person is going to run for the presidency at this point in history, and they can't jab at their enemies, they can't put on a spectacle for the American people, they don't have anything witty to say, either in video form or in text form or whatever it happens to be. If they're averse to social media and prefer more antiquated approaches to campaigning like Hillary Clinton, they're not going to win. They're going to lose almost invariably. A very small number of them might slip through the cracks. Increasingly, that will be a very small number of individuals. Trump capitalized on social media. Doesn't give a fuck about the TV generation's gala or anything like that. It's useless to him. It doesn't get him anything. There's a risk that he loses support. There's no chance that he gains support. What's in it for him should be the ethos of his entire presidency. And other presidents operate this way. It's just that until now, the TV generation actually mattered insofar as its media content. Now it doesn't. It no longer matters. Too few people trust what they say anyway for it to be worth his time to show up to talk to Rachel Maddow or Anderson Cooper or any of these other people. During the election, he was obviously very comfortable around the internet, but he looked somewhat less comfortable when he had to interact with these talking heads. I don't think he likes doing that. The most comfortable he's ever appeared to be in media-related stuff is going on the Howard Stern show. And that's radio. Predominantly. It's something most people are hearing it. They're not seeing what's actually happening in the studio or something like that. And it's more interpersonal and, let's face it, more entertainment-driven as opposed to, oh yeah, here's the boring hour-long spiel where I ask him very directed policy-related questions or something like that. So I don't blame him. I think it's a good thing, actually. The tradition should die. It's useless in the modern age. Get a bunch of people together on a Skype call and live stream that on whitehouse.org or whatever, and let them roast you instead. That'd be hilarious. Yeah, have them have little jokes that they write up, and they can roast Donald Trump. They can roast the president of the United States via live stream, populated to YouTube and stuff. That would be funny. That would be able to be interacted with. It would be something amusing for people to see, and it would show that personable side of Donald Trump. What he should do is refuse to attend this. Yeah, that's a good idea. Start your own sort of correspondent thing that relates to social media, that relates to YouTubers and Facebook admins and people on Twitter who have X number of followers. Take them in. and communicate directly with them in a sort of a council arrangement. Whether it's informational or entertaining, that doesn't really matter as much. People are going to watch it anyway. And thus, you completely undercut the corporate media. Once again, like with tweeting out what he believes in, tweeting out what he wants to do, who he doesn't like, that's been very effective. He can extend that further and dominate social media essentially in a political fashion while undercutting the same people that, they're not going to give him a fair shake. CNN's never going to warm up to Donald Trump. It doesn't matter. He could give him $1 billion. They still wouldn't warm up to him. They'd probably report, Donald Trump tried to bribe us or something like that. He has to be wary of the corporate media more than anything else, because most of them are never going to give him the light of day. It's not going to happen. It's not worth his time. That's about all. Peace out.